Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. So here we are at episode 2 from Pharma to Farm. And literally this episode could be a whole series just in itself, a 5-day series, but I'm gonna really condense this into tiny little points just so you get the general message and then call it a day. So, I'm going to start with doctors, then I'm going to move on to pharma, then I'm going to talk about the food industry, and then close it out with Congress, and then leave you with, empower you with solutions and options, because I don't want you to hear this and just feel overwhelmed or anything like that. I want you to feel empowered. So, okay, so let's start with doctors. First of all, hey Melissa. Okay, so one of the biggest ironies with physicians is that people put all of their faith into what they can eat, what they can do, the lifestyle they live, mainly with nutrition, in their doctor's hands. But the irony is this: the Journal of American Medicine, which is one of the top medical journals, published 2 years ago this irony that doctors have in, say, the 12 years that they have of medical school, they have less than 2% nutritional training. It's basically a couple chapters within a semester of one book of nutritional training. So think about that. And the Journal of American Medicine talked about the irony that they have so little nutritional training, yet when they survey people, doctors have the most amount, people put the most amount of faith in their physician for nutritional advice. So think about that. Least amount of training, but they are given the most amount of credibility when it comes to nutrition. So, and you think about with a lot of the guidelines, doctors don't have that kind of time to sit and explain nutrition or things like that, even if they were trained on it. So a lot of physicians, which leads me to my next thing, doctors are making less and less and less because of the cost of medical school, the cost of having overhead in an office, managed care being the biggest one, paying them less. So they have to see more patients to earn more money. So they're spending less time with their patients. They are incentivized to try and just by the insurance companies to get people's numbers down. They are measured by basically getting their people's numbers, I guess, down or up, depending on whatever disease they have. Just get the numbers right at any cost. So instead of taking the longer route and talking about nutrition and lifestyle change and all of these things, what's the fastest way to get someone's numbers where they need to be? Medication. So they're going to be very quick to prescribe just to get those numbers down. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit when I move on to the pharma part of it. So doctors are between a rock and a hard place because they've got to see more people, get their numbers where they need to be. They're not experts on nutrition, and yet we basically put all of our faith into the physician's hands when it comes to nutrition. The irony too is, if you think about where the money is, think in your area. How many doctors that you know are starting to do cash pay procedures? So you're seeing a lot of these wellness clinics pop up within doctors' offices where they're doing Botox, they're doing fillers, they're doing age rejuvenation type things, hair removal, laser hair removal. They're doing all these other cash pay procedures to cover their overhead, to cover their malpractice insurance, to cover for the unfortunate fact that it costs so much more money. There's so much more overhead in being a physician nowadays. They can't see enough patients. So do they tend to be quicker to do surgeries? Yeah, they make more money on surgeries. They're doing a lot more of these wellness clinics. So I want to put in perspective the intentions sometimes of some physicians, not all, are not going to be in your best interest. So it's important that you are your advocate when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to what procedures are best for you. And think about the kind of doctor you go to is going to treat in their specialty. So if I have a back problem and I go to a chiropractor, he is going to treat the alignment of my back. But if I go to an orthopedic, the orthopedic may want to give me cortisone injections or some type of, or maybe have surgery. If I go to a psychiatrist is going to talk about how to relieve stress so that there's not as much tension in my back. So going to the specific type of doctor is also going to lead you down a path of a treatment based on their specialty as well. And some can be really, really expensive, especially in the case of an orthopedic. So is there a time and place for doctors? Yes, but understand they are very limited. You can go to a functional medicine doctor, you can go to a naturopath, there are other solutions out there. I just would not put all your faith into your one or two medically focused, pill-focused physicians, because again, they are very limited. Take what knowledge they give you, but do your diligence in other arenas too. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next thing. The pharmaceutical company. I did pharmaceutical sales for 10 years, so I can speak for days on this. In the pharmaceutical world, the money comes from chronic diseases. That's where their money makers are. So what I mean by that, long-term disease compared to a short-term round of antibiotics, right? Why do you think they want to come up with to treat all these diseases that are long-term? They've got a customer for life. So we were not in the business for treating people. We're in the business for keeping people just enough that they stay sick long-term to stay on our medications. Because that's where the money is. When they paid me out, I was paid both on the amount of people I could keep on my medications as well as the new people I could start on my medications. And that's why a lot of pharma companies focus on long-term diseases because, again, there's income for life. Now, here is, so you think about with pharma, their objective, their business plan is not necessarily to treat you to better. It's to treat you just enough to stay just sick enough so you stay on their medications, okay? I've got my notes here. Okay, here's the other thing with pharmaceutical companies. Remember yesterday I was talking about how drugs, everything is just causes a reaction. So there can be a side effect or it could be a benefit depending on the drug. When it comes, so I'm gonna talk about comorbidity. Comorbidity is when you have one thing, but other things cascade around it. So if you have diabetes, what also is around those sugar levels is also cholesterol, depression, blood pressure. So those are comorbid things just around the diabetes, okay? That's what comorbid is. Pharma companies want comorbidity because, and the comorbidity can come from the disease, like diabetes, because now not only are they giving a medicine to get the sugars down, but now they're also getting a statin, they're also getting maybe Viagra because of bad circulation, they're also getting antidepressants, they're also getting ACE inhibitors. So for that one disease, pharma companies love the comorbidity. When you think of autoimmune diseases, once you've had one autoimmune disease, you are 95% likely to have another 2 to 3. So it's not so much in pharma about treating the disease, it's about the comorbidity. So the comorbidity, can come from the disease itself, but that comorbidity can also come from the side effects of the drugs that they're giving you. So you're getting a drug to treat one thing, but that drug gives you bad headaches. So now what do you need? You reach for something like Imitrex to help with these bad headaches you're getting, or the muscle soreness you're getting, or the fibromyalgia that it's causing you. So pharma companies know there's comorbidities with the diseases if they don't necessarily fully treat the disease, and there's also comorbidities with the drugs that people take that may have them taking more drugs. Big, big business. Pharma companies are in the business of long-term customers. Okay, yes, Catherine, I actually just talked about that with the physicians because the physicians are in a tough spot. They're, when I get to the government, you'll hear about that in a second, but they're given so much pressure just to get people's numbers where they need to be, and it's the pharma companies that can get the drugs, get them there the quickest. So think about if you had a leak in your roof, and the water's coming down. I hear this all the time from people. They're like, my numbers are under control, my numbers are great, but that's on medication. So if you had a leak in your roof and I came out, you hired me to come fix your roof, and I looked at your roof and I pulled out of the back of my car a tarp and I went on your roof, I put the tarp over the leak, put a couple bricks down to keep the tarp from blowing off. I come down and I said, you're all set, your roof is fixed. And you're like, what would you do? You're like, my roof's not fixed. Well, the water's not getting in. That's the analogy I want to use for what pills do to the disease. Disease is not fixed. It's still there. It's still brewing. It's still causing more damage. It's still declining in your health. You just took a pill and put a tarp over the leak. You're covering the symptoms, but you're not fixing the problem. So that's basically what pharma companies want to have happen. Okay, let's talk about the food industry. Okay. The food industry has a lot of pressure, bigger, better, faster, stronger, as far as whether it's meat, poultry, growing things faster to feed the masses. They also have pressure to get foods from point A to point B, which may take 3 to 4 weeks without it rotting. So what is the solution to that? How can they make food grow faster, bigger, juicier, greener, look more appealing, and last longer? They genetically modify it. And by genetically modifying it, we can get food the way it looks at your supermarket that's not organic. It looks amazing. It's probably 3 or 4 weeks old. So there is a lot of pressure from the food industry in that regard. So who does the food industry reach to for this process, to buy these chemicals, to buy these pesticides and dyes and all the things that they put, steroids, all of that? Who do they reach to? I would love to see if somebody guesses this. I won't wait too long. The food industry reaches to Monsanto. They reach who is owned and in bed with the pharma company. So you have Monsanto, and you guys can Google all of this. You've got Monsanto and you've got pharma creating these things to manipulate the food that we now know makes people sick. Think about that. And nobody questions this. So now we're ingesting food with pesticides and dyes, which create reactions in the body that then, if you guys heard my story about the orange last week and how I got the eczema patch, typically you would then go to the doctor and get a prescription for a medication to put on your arm, right? But it was one of the compounds that was probably sprayed on the orange that set of oranges that I ate. Anyway, point is, they're all in bed with one another to exacerbate sickness, and it's pretty insane. Okay, so you guys have the point with that. So you think about, when it comes to the food industry, you have the cattle industry in Texas. The Midwest is really big for dairy, soy, sugar, all of those things. Pesticides, GMOs, all of that. You've got Monsanto, so they're tied in with pharma. And you would think, so what's Congress doing about this? Which leads me to my fourth thing. What's Congress doing about this? This is, when you look at the food pyramid, every single food is on there. Like you should have so many portions of meat and so many portions of dairy and so on and so forth. And the truth of the matter is it's not accurate at all, because you can actually get more protein from plant sources than you can from animal protein. Now, I do eat animal protein. I'm not a vegan, but I do know that people automatically think, oh, I need animal protein to have protein, when there's a lot more protein in a lot of plant-based sources. Dairy is not necessary. But why is all this so think about, why does the government put all of these on the food pyramid? Why does it say you have to have so many servings, and why do we have to give our kids so many servings of these things? Think about it. Okay, so Congress is paid heavily by the pharma industry, number one. Lobbyists to have certain drugs pushed, to, all in the presence of helping people. But pharma has their lobbyists that work at Congress, because I remember sitting down with my manager one day in pharma, and I was looking at a couple of drugs that were pulled off the market. And I looked at the clinical data, and I'm like, how the hell were these drugs ever approved? Like when you look at the clinical data, they shouldn't have ever even really been approved. And he laughed and he goes, you'd be surprised that it just really boils down to who lines the most pockets at Congress. It's pretty scary. So you've got that. Hang on, I keep getting notifications. Now, think about with Congress and the food industry, back to why do they have all these food regulations that we should have so much every single day when they're really not necessary, we know from a nutritional standpoint. Number one, what congressperson is going to say, no, you technically don't need cow meat, or you technically don't need dairy, and take it off the food pyramid, right? What's gonna happen? The whole state of Texas is gonna get really PO'd, all those cattle farmers. And so how do you think that's going to affect the voting with electoral votes for people in Congress if they piss off the state of Texas or they piss off the Midwest by taking dairy off? It's all about votes because they want to keep those on there to keep those states and their main industries happy. So last thing they're going to do is piss off the state of Texas, who's huge with electoral votes. Corn industry too, that's huge in the Midwest. So all of that's going to stay on there. And man, I could go do another whole call on just how, like, on how the government is with genetically modified things and saying that they're safe and all of that, because they don't want to piss off Monsanto and the pharmaceutical companies that pay them. They will say what they need to say. It's up to us to do our diligence. So listen, I am not sharing this to freak you guys out at all. I'm sharing this to enlighten you. I've been on the pharma end of it. I've been on the nutritional end of it. I've been in doctors' offices. I've been there. I know how the system works. There are at least 6 or 7 amazing documentaries that really get into the behind the scenes and interview people with like their faces all shaded out that worked at Congress and how much money they would make from pharma companies. And again, it's the government that's putting these regulations and this pressure on the doctors as well that, hey, you got to get these numbers down. So anyway, I wanted to show you how everything is tied into one another. And it's not as pure as it seems until you start peeling things back and you realize who's benefiting from my choices and for what is quoted standard. And in most cases, it's the government. It all comes down to the government and Congress, and then you have all these other companies that are in bed with them. So it's really interesting. Just remember, again, pharma's whole intentions are to keep people sick, not to get them well, and to keep people on drugs long term. So what does this mean for you guys? How can this empower you? Number one, remember that you need to be your own advocate. Take the information in, but don't let it end there. Don't let it just, okay, that's what my doctor said. Be your own advocate. Do some research. Get a second opinion from a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor. Get other opinions in different industries that have different philosophies on treating. The other thing is, the last thing I'm going to leave you with is this. We are consumers and we drive the market. They are going to provide us with what we buy. So as people buy, if people are going to continue to buy these things and buy into the system, that's what they're going to provide. No, why wouldn't they? But if we as consumers start shifting person by person, message by message, and we start demanding better quality food, more organic, things like that, that's what's going to drive the market. So we do have the power to change the market. It's just we have to understand what their intentions are and how that affects our choices. Sorry. So I hope that enlightens you guys. I'm going to read some of these comments. It's appalling how outside the U.S. things have to be proven safe before they can be sold. Inside the U.S., we won't take anything off the shelves unless it's proven unsafe. You're absolutely right. In fact, Catherine, I'll tell you a quick story. So Shakeology is the superfood shake. Canada is one of the hardest companies to get a product into, which is a pain in the butt for some Canadians, but it's awesome for their health. And it's funny because they pay for their healthcare system, right? Same thing with England. It's another one that's really hard because the government's paying for the health. Here, it's private. Anyway, Canada, when we were looking to import Shakeology into Canada, every single superfood on the back, so there's 70 superfoods in Shakeology, and all have very medicinal purposes and medicinal benefits. Every single superfood had to go through Canada's form of FDA and get approved and make sure there was no drug interactions, like I was talking about yesterday, that there weren't drug interactions, that there weren't, that it had proven benefit. In England, 3 weeks ago, the government said Shakeology is a whole food. It's the only one in the history of shakes that has been deemed a true whole food, because it's literally dried whole foods, which I've been saying for years. But England deemed it as a real whole food. But those are the kinds of processes other companies, like we have to go through, or other countries go through, where in the US it's like you said, it's got to be proven, where people are dying and then they're like, oh, okay, we'll take it off the market now. It's insane. I wish our country was designed to be more strict the way it is in other countries, but I think with the way, because obviously we have private health care, and it's the way Congress is with pharma, and just the way our whole system is broken. I'm not out to change the way the system is and fix it, but I do want to create a grassroots movement with consumers that care about what they're feeding their families and are sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, to make small little choices and be aware so that they can live healthier and take control over their own health again and feel amazing and not get duped into, you know, the way the government wants us to think. So anyway, I hope that was helpful for you guys, and I will be back tomorrow. We are going to dive into diabetes, and that is my bread, like that's my baby. I love talking about diabetes. So if you have anyone, if you're diabetic, if you know anybody who's diabetic, type 2, make sure they're on tomorrow or watch the recording tomorrow, because it is really good. It will be amazing. All right, guys, take care. Have a great Tuesday.